Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. In 1864, the fall of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's capital, Tianjin, Nanjing, marked the complete failure of this great peasant movement. The Taiping Rebellion was one of the largest and most influential peasant uprisings in Chinese history, and one of the most tumultuous peasant movements in world history. Although it ultimately failed, it left a deep mark on history and set many unprecedented precedents. For example, in terms of marriage systems, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom introduced the monogamy rule, emphasizing that no marriage is to be based on wealth. This meant that marriage was no longer tied to financial status. Additionally, they required couples to obtain marriage certificates when getting married, a notably modern step for that time. However, in the early stages of the movement, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom banned marriage between men and women for a time and strictly prohibited spouses from sleeping together. These harsh rules not only confused the people but also became a subject of ridicule for foreigners. Foreigners mocked, saying, "How can such a conservative system result in reproduction?" This awkward situation reflected some of the contradictions and overly radical approaches in the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's reforms. According to relevant historical experts, the name Taiping Heavenly Kingdom actually represents a combination of China's traditional ideal of the world at peace and the Christian concept of heavenly kingdom. Before launching the Jintian uprising, Xiuqing had already proposed the idea of Taiping. He believed that the ideal society should be stable and harmonious, where people could live in peace and prosperity. As early as 1843, Xiuqing introduced the idea of one family under heaven, sharing peace, hoping to see a society of fairness and justice, without the gap between the rich and the poor, where everyone could live in harmony. This idea reflected his pursuit of social equality and his vision of a better future. In 1851, when Xiuqing launched the uprising in Jintian, Guangxu, and issued a declaration, he often used the term "true mandate of heaven," indicating that the regime he led was bestowed by heaven's mandate and emphasizing its legitimacy. On the one hand, this was to strengthen the regime's legitimacy. On the other, it showcased Xiuqing's religious beliefs. He was heavily influenced by Christianity and believed he was a messenger chosen by heaven, with a mission to change society. As the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom developed, Xiuqing further emphasized the position of Heavenly Father in his faith and continued to retain the term Taiping to highlight his pursuit of a peaceful society. Therefore, the name Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was essentially a call from Xiuqing for an ideal society, one in which he hoped to create a peaceful and just world. Furthermore, the Taiping army's approach was completely different from that of the Qing dynasty's soldiers. They adopted many methods that directly opposed the Qing regime, the most prominent of which was their refusal to shave their heads or braid their hair, and instead let their hair flow in the wind. This protest against the Qing dynasty's hair-shaving order was a direct defiance of the Manchu culture promoted by the Qing government. Some historical records indicate that, in the early stages of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, influenced by the social and historical conditions of the time, Yang Xiuqing and Xiaochaogui were granted the power of acting as the Heavenly Father spokesperson and acting as the Heavenly Brother spokesperson, respectively. This may sound mysterious or even absurd, but it was indeed a political structure within the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom at the time. At that time, everyone, including Xiuqing, had to communicate with the will of God and Jesus through Yang Xiuqing and Xiaochaogui. Even Xiuqing himself had to bow down and listen to Yang Xiuqing. Yang Xiuqing's religious authority was almost unshakable, and his power even surpassed that of Xiuqing, the Heavenly King. It was this imbalance of power that later became one of the main reasons for Yang Xiuqing's attempt to seize power. From today's perspective, the leadership system of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom may seem unreliable. But why did it last for about 14 years and even make the Qing government feel troubled, attracting a large number of common people to join? This is closely related to a decree issued by the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom in the early days of the uprising, the land system of the Heavenly Kingdom. This decree was not only progressive but also full of idealistic elements. And it was the most attractive part of the entire uprising. During the Qing dynasty, the issue of land monopoly was extremely serious. Bureaucrats and landowners used their power to seize large amounts of land. And many peasants were deprived of their land, falling into hardship. Many families became tenant farmers, who not only had to bear heavy rents but also faced various taxes and corruption from Qing officials, further adding to their misery. The Qing government failed to effectively address these issues, leading to an increasing gap between the rich and the poor, and the people's living conditions became even more difficult. The Tianchao Tianmujidu, Heavenly Kingdom system of land distribution, proposed a vision that was radically different from traditional social orders, namely, the equal distribution of land to each family. This policy challenged the long-standing monopolies over land and the class inequality, aiming to eliminate the gap between rich and poor and ensure that the people could truly own their own land. In the context of the time, especially for those struggling with issues related to land, this proposal held great appeal. Many people saw hope in this decree and believed that by following the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, they could obtain land and live a relatively stable life. Even though the realization of this ideal seemed distant, the common people were willing to try in the face of their hardships. Additionally, the decree established a grassroots national treasury, stipulating that every family, besides keeping enough grain for personal consumption, should contribute the remainder of their grain to the national treasury, to be used as public resources for matters such as weddings, funerals, and disaster relief. This resource distribution model was originally designed to address poverty, ensuring the survival of the most vulnerable groups in society. For those unable to work, the decree also mandated that the national treasury would cover their living expenses. This measure reflected the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's attempt to establish a centralized social welfare system to ensure that everyone's basic survival needs would be met. In the early stages of the uprising, this centralized management did indeed reduce the economic burden on the peasants and stimulated their enthusiasm for production. In some areas, there were even bumper harvests and relatively stable social conditions. And the lives of the people improved for a time. For the peasants, these policies brought a glimmer of hope, especially in times of economic hardship, and many were willing to believe that this uprising might bring about change. However, these idealistic visions were ultimately difficult to realize. In practice, many of the decrees were not fully implemented, and issues in management, as well as corruption, meant that these plans were not fully realized. It is worth noting that the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom also introduced relatively advanced reforms on women's issues and marriage systems. First, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom stipulated that women would have equal rights in land distribution and be allowed to participate in military and political affairs, even holding official positions and participating in the Imperial examination system. This was a very progressive measure at the time, especially considering the low status of women in traditional society. Furthermore, the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom promoted marriage freedom and banned the buying and selling of marriages. These policies not only elevated the social status of women but also encouraged them to participate in social affairs and revolutionary causes. Even more remarkable was the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's allowance for widows to remarry, which was very rare during the Qing dynasty. The decree also stipulated a monogamous system, forbidding promiscuous relations between men and women. These policies, when viewed in the context of the social norms of the time, appeared relatively advanced, especially in improving the status of women and ensuring the stability of families, and had some historical significance. However, the marriage system and gender policies of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom did not fully align with modern standards. In the early stages of the movement, several alternative bans were introduced. the most famous of which was the policy of gender segregation. According to this policy, men and women were strictly separated in all matters. No matter the reason, no contact between the sexes was allowed. Even married couples were not permitted to stay together freely, and even relatives were not allowed to meet. Many mothers and sons, or other family members, could only catch glimpses of each other from a distance, and it was a rare occurrence to exchange even a few words. This extreme policy of gender segregation clearly triggered a great deal of complaints and resentment. The driving force behind this policy was Xiuqing, the East King of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. He insisted that the difference between men and women was ordained by heaven, and that failure to observe gender etiquette within the army was a sign of disrespect. He even claimed that cohabiting between men and women could only happen with the permission of the Heavenly Father, in order to ensure the continuation of the human race. When asked to explain this absurd claim, Xiuqing offered no reasonable explanation but instead emphasized that it was the will of the Heavenly Father. When a few British people learned of this, they were both surprised and puzzled. They asked Xiuqing, "So, if someone urgently needs to continue their family line but has to wait for permission, what should they do?" Xiuqing's response was still, "Everything is decided by the Heavenly Father." This explanation not only seemed absurd but also highlighted the practical management difficulties Xiuqing faced, attempting to resolve internal political problems using religious authority. Despite widespread public opposition to the ban, Xiuqing remained unmoved. However, under the internal divisions and pressures within the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, he eventually had to relax some of the regulations, allowing married couples to return to a normal family life. But due to the extreme measures initially implemented, the people mistakenly believed that the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom prohibited marriage between men and women. Even so, the policy of gender segregation was not completely abolished, and normal social interactions between young men and women remained strictly limited. Interestingly, despite such strict management, the senior leadership within the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was known for indulging in polygamy. After the capital was moved to Tianjin, many leaders became addicted to luxury, including Xiuqing himself. He even abandoned his focus on state affairs, immersing himself in the luxurious palaces he had built, enjoying an opulent lifestyle. Other kings followed his example, leading lives of hedonism. With the exception of Xiuqing, almost all of them fell into a life of indulgence. The extravagant behavior of these senior leaders stood in stark contrast to the high-pressure policies they imposed on the people, causing a serious division in both the politics and morals of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. Although the later stages of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom attempted to punish and ban such behaviors, these violations of women's rights were never fully eradicated and instead became part of the unspoken rules of society within the kingdom. Some historians have commented that the failure of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom was not only due to its military disadvantages but also its inability to effectively resolve internal contradictions and injustices, ultimately leading to the collapse of its regime. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.